proceed. Now, Al, proceed if you would.
All right. Well, thanks to the commissioners for this opportunity to present findings of the Structure Committee. Historically speaking, this whole process began back in July of last year when a number of committees were put together. And I reference a article in the World dated July 22nd, 2011, where the committees were listed. Forest Advisory Committee, Pettit and Bob Main. Governance Advisory Committee, liaison Fred Nestle. Roads Advisory Committee, liaison Cam Perry. Structure Advisory Committee, liaison Fred Nestle. Industrial Acquisition Advisory Committee, liaisons Bob Main and Cam Perry. Nearshore Ocean Fishery Advisory Committee, liaison Cam Perry. And Energy Advisory Committee, liaison Cam Perry.
One correction, I'm not the liaison for the governance, Cam is.
Governance Advisory Committee, liaison Fred Nestle.
No, should
Cam.
me.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
That's okay.
This was taken directly from the World, so yes. Corrections. And governance later. The article goes on to say, Commissioner Bob Main said he was impressed by the response, and the 6th Committee Energy was still open because of the last-minute trickle of applications. I love when people get involved. It's really cool. Every once in a while, I like to say people should get away from the TV. Stop talking to your TV about your government, get involved. If you have an interest, go express your opinion, get on a school board, get on a committee, make a difference. Main stressed that all decisions affecting the county are left to the hands of the commissioners. The commissioners don't have to take what they recommend, but I think most people will have some well thought out ideas to bring on board.
And I still say that.
Well, I think that honeymoon lasts about as long as Kim Kardashian, but I think the point here is that the last statement there that the commissioners have final say on any recommendations that these committees present. I don't know what's going on with a lot of the other committees. I haven't read anything about them. I haven't heard anything about them. But
the reason the honeymoon ended really quickly on the structure committee was now just wait a minute. Wait a second. Right now.
Commissioner, you're not.
Okay.
Right. Wait a minute, Mr. Chair. I have a correction and an innuendo I need to address by you, Mr. Pettit. The reason I did not agree with what was going on in the structure committee was it was presented to the newspaper before the structure committee even met, which is highly improper. Thereafter you had meetings, and then when you presented, only gave us the report because you didn't have time, then you went to the Coos Bay North Bend Chamber of Commerce and presented without ever talking to us. You should have talked to us to begin with. It's highly improper, and what I said a while back in a board meeting was, if that person or persons would have worked for me and I was the CEO, I would have fired them both times. Okay? Now you can proceed, please.
Mr. Pettit would get on a microphone instead of strutting, we could hear better.
I'll give Mr. Pettit my microphone.
Is this way it's going to be?
No.
Getting back to the original problem, which existed back in July, which was the assumption that we had a budget problem. Cam, yes or no, timber payments are going away?
Oh, yeah.
And you've been back to Washington, D.C. Based on the information you have, as a betting man, would you bet that these timber payments are going to continue, or are they going to go away?
I don't believe SRS is going to continue in any form right now the way it looks on the Senate level.
Okay. Fred, what's that represent to the general fund in terms of dollars and percentages?
Based on what we had, probably about 25 to 30% based on what we had at the peak of it.
Okay. Based on that assumption, Mr. Main, those kinds of cuts, does that represent headcount cut in the near future or distant future?
Does it represent what?
Does that kind of revenue fall off potentially represent headcount cuts?
Well, it depends on what you mean in the future. We have a cushion of about $8.5 million right at the moment, and we can stretch that out. This current year, we got $2.3 million, a little less than that, but $2.3 million from the last payment of the SRS. So we could stretch that out maybe 4 years, 3 years, something like that.
Okay.
And by that time, I'm not advocating cuts, because by that time, something will have been done to fund the counties, I believe. They're not going to let Curry County, Josephine County, Klamath County, Columbia County, etc., go insolvent. It's not going to happen. So we will probably be able, in my opinion, squeak by with our present staff until something is done at the federal level to alleviate our problem.
Okay. So is that a plan of wishful thinking? That the feds are going to step up and refund?
I just said we have $8.5 million in reserve. The last payment we received was $2.3 million. To divide 2.3, you get about 3+ years, almost 4 years, if we're careful. Therefore, we can extend another 4 years, hopefully, without cutting positions.
Okay.
Now, bear in mind, we have other things, the constraints that may cause extra expense. But at this moment, I'm not advocating anybody be cut.
Well, I know nobody's advocating that, but what I'm
You
trying to
asked
get
me
to
my
is,
opinion.
do we have an economic problem coming down the road?
You asked me my opinion.
Okay.
I stated it.
Let's move forward.
All right. Okay. David Jennings, the American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees, which represents about 135 Coos County workers, said layoffs and reductions in county services would have wide impacts. You will not be able to attract industry, development, or growth in a county that has no crime-fighting ability, doesn't have public health, and can't even file documents to make sure everything's planning counties impacted by these funds. So I think it's safe to assume that the problem that existed back when we started this process still exists today. So on that note, we'll take a look at what the Structure Committee came up with, and this has always been our charter from the beginning. Assess the county's current organizational structure and determine if the current structure is operationally adequate to meet today's financial challenges. And if not, identify potential cost savings that might be obtained through the existing structure or an alternative structure. Now, this is the exact same presentation that was made on December 7th to the Joint Structure and Governance Committee. This is the only slide that was added. Just simply listed the volunteer members. Craig Zanny, Coos County Sheriff. J.J. McLeod, CEO of South Coast Business Employment Corporation. Daniela Kellum, Coos County Child Support Division. Larry Bryant, Oregon Economic Development Department, retired. Tim Slater, Executive Director, Bay Area Chamber of Commerce. John Barton, Board Chair, South Coast Economic Development Council. Myself, and Fred Messley, BOC liaison to the Structure Committee, Committee Architect. We completed our findings, and in our meeting of November 9th, unanimously agreed to the findings.
We've gone through a lot of information here. I mean, do we want to take a swag at trying to get this boiled down into some bullet points, or do you want to absorb this and try and meet again before December 7th? Again, we have to take all this information and get it down into a couple of concise slides.
I would think from our side, especially after all the material we have, if we could, whatever personal summation that each of us have drawn, could send it to a centralized spot, and we'll let you guys try to bump it into a draft of bullet points, and give whatever.
That would be extremely helpful to us.
Give us a week to do that or something,
Sure.
and then get it to you that way. It would seem to me that might be the easiest or most efficient.
Is that okay with you?
Commissioners need to primarily focus on new revenue streams. When I did the joint presentation in December with the Governance Committee, we talked about the micromanagement issue a little bit, and I took some examples from Board of Commissioners' agendas. For instance, here today we authorized the purchase of a computer. Who knows how that impacts the budget? I don't think we looked at that today, but we're having these folks sit here and get approval for toner, for paper, for computers. One of my favorites from past agenda was approval to get a coffee urn for the jail. We've got a serious problem coming up here. If we're going to try and save jobs, then the commissioners need to primarily focus on new revenue streams. Immediately hire a county administrator. This has been a big deal here, but implement commissioner mandates, manage the day-to-day county business, bring skill sets necessary to effectively manage the business side of the county, insulates county employees from politics, creates a healthier work environment, provides a single point of contact with commissioners regarding the business issues, provides continuity by managing to a county blueprint, allows for expeditious resolution of many departmental issues, and allows departmental managers to do their jobs. Now again, we've talked about the fact that we lost 2 commissioners last year. We're going to have 2 more new commissioners this year. Disruption in the process. That just delays the ability to address some of the more important issues here. County administrator gives continuity that's important to the employees. Now, this is a case where you spend some money to make some money. Now, it wasn't our job to find all the details. I'm not hired to do that. Structure committee wasn't hired to do that. That wasn't our charter. But I think we gave the commissioners enough meat here in the findings report. And if you haven't read it, I highly recommend you do. But there's enough meat in that finding report to get people on the hunt for some pretty good savings.
You know what the average tenure of a city manager or county manager is?
No, I don't.
About 3 years.
Now, question was, how do we fund this? Well, solid waste, best I can tell, we're losing about $20,000 a month. You get solid waste to break even, you pay for your county administrator, you pocket $100,000 to $300,000 in the balance. So, there's one way to pay for it. IT. Now, Mr. Main, you took me to the woodshed pretty good about this last week because some comments I made in the paper. So let me address that for just a moment. Last year, the world's most affected network was hacked and brought to its knees for approximately 8 hours. That network, of course, was the CIA's. So, to state that we're immune from any kind of attack or that we are not susceptible to attack is probably a pretty strong statement. I mean, if the CIA is the world's #1 network in terms of protection, then I think it's safe to assume that we're not number 2 or number 3. Now, stating that we're not susceptible to attack probably is more reckless than stating the obvious, which is that the network isn't susceptible to attack. And as a former IT guy, one of our favorite sayings was, there is no such thing as secure, it's just that some are better than others.
And that's what I said. I said we're as secure as the others. I didn't say we're 100% bulletproof.
Okay. So
nobody is, as you just said.
Our recommendation is develop a plan to address the lack of critical middle management in several departments, because some of these departments are about ready to fall over. Maximize county resources and dollars through greater cross-departmental cooperation. Align departments based on functional lines, even if you can't do it. Consider winter closure of some parks, and I underline consider. Horizontal and vertical communication between...
Just a correction there on the parks. We do close the parks, some of them, and on the minor ones, and on the major ones we close certain sections. We already do that.
Let's continue the talk here, and then we'll have.
Well, it's good at the moment, though, when we're talking about it.
Well, we're not in a debate here. We're in a
No, I'm just making a correction.
Go ahead.
The findings report gets into more details on what our recommendations are there. More transparency with financials. Public needs a better understanding of how departments get funded. Public needs to understand unbudgeted and unaccrued expenses that are coming. Some unaccrued expenses, which are significant and large, are nothing more than a footnote on the audit reports, and they're significant. Standardize the budgeting process for all departments. If we're going to properly manage this situation coming up here, we're going to have a very clear understanding, again, of the implications of expenses and revenue losses or revenue gains. Next time they do this exercise, volunteer and get in and come up with some different ones. But at least we're putting some things on the table, or at least we're getting people talking, and at least we're thinking about things that Curry County started thinking about 6 months before the disaster is about to hit. I attended their last planning.